So yeah, that's a Nissan Elgrand. So it's the big vans you see running around. Very lots of electronics and all crazy stuff for their age. They beat anything on the road that you'd buy in Australia for electronics and everything else. Alright, so overall, pretty simple job that we've got going. We've got the tools for the job. So I have a jack, I've got the new shock, and this is an old one. You can see there, pretty knackered. That was from the other side. I've already done the other side. It's about a 20-minute job. I probably spent about 20 minutes trying to find all my tools, but overall it's probably a 20-minute job. Need this breaker bar with a spanner in it. We need the long bar because the bolts that are in the car are really hard to deal with. So not many tools or anything needed. Alright, so first step is just taking that wheel off. So I'll just get rid of the wheel and then we'll move on. Can't falter an Elgrand. The engine, same engine that comes out of Maxima's, and more surprisingly the engine comes out of 350Zs, so the Nissan sports cars. So it's a pretty much a hard to kill engine. It's this one's probably using a little bit of oil now in its old age. Generally they're well looked after in Japan, but not so much here, and I'm responsible for not looking after cars here very well. So always worth checking your brakes and everything. So back brakes need doing. Probably should have ordered some just to get everything done in one go, but it's not too hard to pull a wheel off and put some more brake pads on. So here we got the disc, that kind of thing. See the shock here, the shiny bit here. So the shock's going up into the car body in the boot, and there's a big bolt at the bottom there which has to come out. So that bolt there, that black thing there, and you can see the top of the bolt sticking through there. Made a bit of a mess pulling this casing off, but I don't care. But yeah, so that little black thing there had a nut on it. I think the nut's just there next to it. This camera is, so here we go. So there you can see the top of it there, the shiny bolt over there. Coming in close. That shiny bolt. So that's the top of the shock. To get these covers off, like this cover here, the thing you can see flapping around, you'd have to take this whole panel out, seats and everything, because it's actually screwed in, stupidly enough, from this side. So that little flap has been screwed from this side. So pretty dumb. I don't know who engineered that. And usually Nissans are pretty good with engineering and stuff, as far as I'm concerned, but bit of a dumb idea, that one. I like to get a bit of penetrating spray in there. I don't necessarily care for WD-40 so much. Any penetrating lube will do it. So this stuff's just going to help me get the nuts and bolts off a bit easier. Now generally if you're going to do this properly, you let it soak overnight. Give it a while to soak right in, and that'll work better. But anyway, I'm just going to give it a spray, and I'm going to end up using the big breaker bar and see how that all goes for me. But doing jobs like this, it's safety first. I've got a jack here. You can see car stands and jacks, and I've got a big, like a big trolley jack, a big mechanic's jack, because this car's 2 tons sitting on the road. So most jacks they'd probably collapse underneath it, that kind of thing. So just be wary when you're playing with cars. Make sure that everything's off the ground and safely. One of these, I just had a courier walk in and trip over my jack. So if my jack was the only thing supporting the car, he probably would have killed me. But yeah, easy job, not hard to do. Again, like I said, you can change your brake pads, and even discs. Like when you pull up this brake pad here to change it, this whole disc will come off. So if your discs, these ones aren't too worn, you'll feel a little groove where it wears. But they're not too worn, so they're fine. But even a set of 4 of these, probably only 120 bucks on eBay. The shocks I got, it's a complete front and back set. I don't know what brand they are, but it doesn't really matter. They're just eBay crap. It was like $600 and they had a bit of a special on them. So I couldn't help myself but jump in and get a set. Anything's going to be better than what was in this. The shocks in this are just dead. They feel really tight, but it takes about 10 minutes for that thing to extend and whatever. But anyway, so you can see the bottom is just 2 bolts. Well, a bolt that goes through both of them, and the bolt, sort of hard to see under the car, but the bolt is extremely big, high tensile, and really, really hard to get off. So it's going to take a bit of swearing and cursing or whatever, but you'll get there. The shocks were so bad on this car that we just did a big trip, fully loaded trip, dogs, cats, roof full of stuff, and I blew a tyre, the inside of the tyre, because the wheels with really bad shocks in them were leaning right in. So instead of sitting flat on the road, they were leaning right in, and it was just wearing on the inside tread only. So we ripped a tyre by doing that. So we were probably overloaded, which is not a good idea, but what do you do when you're going away somewhere? But a better set of shocks in this would have stopped that tyre being destroyed. So I had good tyres on this car. I think they had got Yokohamas, even the spares like Yokohamas. So it's a shame to destroy a really good set of Yokohamas on something that you could fix for, like, I don't know, back shocks, maybe 150 bucks, 120 bucks for a set. Alright, so we're looking for breaker bar on the big nut. And unfortunately, this nut undoes by lifting. So this is a lifting nut. Thank you, rough base. When the other side you're pushing down, which makes it a bit easier. I'm just going to get this bar in and see if I can break it. Now without the bar, I wouldn't be able to do this. It's just not possible. This is the bolt that holds the bottom of the shock. Goes through there. See how that sits. Now you see this little flare here. You see how that, when it does up, it butts against the actual shock. It'll hold on to the side of the shock. You can see this. Sorry, the bad camera. Ugh, such a little camera, this little thing is a bit dicky. So you can see this is bent a bit. So that's not really good. I'm not going to replace it, I'll just smack it back into shape. But it shouldn't be that bent, so it made it harder pulling it out because it's allowing this to spin. You know, so undoing that, it was hard enough, but having this bolt with a little bent end there is even more annoying. But you get these little things going on with old cars and whatever. So I'm going to belt this with a trusty hammer. But before you do anything with the bolt, put the nut back on the end. If you wreck the thread, you're in for deep trouble. So whenever you're belting nuts and stuff like that, I just have it so it's flush, so the nut will take any impact, not the actual bolt, because I'm just going to belt this on the concrete, straighten that out, because that's how it's done. Like a new one. That's what it's supposed to look like. So when this bolt goes through here, it's just a quick job. So you see now when the bolt's there, when you're doing it up, it won't spin around. You know, these shocks are a little bit different to what I had. They're a little bit wider on this bit, so, but it'll still work. I wasn't real happy with this. I was knocking around. In the end, you can see it's not really connected. Like, I don't know if that's zooming in right, but you can kind of see the lip part isn't really a part of the bolt, so giving it a few taps it all came quite loose. So I've just put a couple of little tack welds on, which doesn't hurt the bolt, doesn't worry it, just a few little bits of tack just to make sure I can belt this thing harder so it wraps around the collar of the shock like I was showing you before, so it kind of grabs onto the collar and then stops this bolt twisting and turning when you're doing it up. I'd always rather have a nut at the other end. I don't know, stupid things like this, they're just prone to failure, and this is on a, you know, a part of the car that gets belted around. So the way this thing was already hanging off, it was liable just to fall off, and then you'll never be able to get the shock off again. Well, you'd have to weld it to the actual shock and then cut it, and oh my god, it'd be pretty messy. So yeah, just a little quick few spot welds on there just to make sure this thing doesn't come off, and it also means I can put it back through the shock and belt it more into shape. So you can see the bottom of the shock down in here now, so that single bolt that we took out's gone. So now, with a bit of fudging and budging, we should be able to pull this shock out. So I'm going to start at the top and just push the shock down. So it's going to give me a bit of room to play, and then out she comes. So that's simple. And this is the shock that's out, so that's what it looks like pulled out. So one nut on top, which is in the boot of the car, which I showed you before. A few little guards and rubber cuffs and whatever. But as you can see, very old, very messy. So now we're just going to put the new one in. So that's shock pretty much reassembled, ready to go back in the car. So it's just the boot. It doesn't do shit really, it's just a stupid boot. So this is the bump stop that came with it. This is the bump stop that used to be on the old one, so they don't actually fit. This one's got a slightly thicker shaft here, which is fine, but fine for strength. But yeah, the original bump stop doesn't work. So the bump stop that come with these is a bit cheap and crappier, but that's okay, it's not the end of the world. And then you got the choice, you can put one of these that came with this thing and then put that through, but I'm not going to do that. We're just going to go bump stop straight into top collar, which has another bump stop on top. So it's just a little bit to stop the beating and the crap that goes on into the shock, but that's pretty much it. Like, that's all you got to do. So I'm just using some of the old bits and some of the new, and that's pretty much it. So we're going to slide this thing back in and continue on. So I'm going to compress the shock down. These shocks are pretty easy to compress down compared to front shocks, which is one of the jobs I'm doing after this thing. So we just insert it back up where it came from and compress the shock like that, up and over, and that's it. So now I just need my bolt, the painful bolt, which is still a little bit hot from welding, but you can see that bit that was pissing me off, the collar there. It's not very easy to show you what I'm about to try to explain, but behind me there's a line here, and you've got a line coming in to the brakes, and it's kind of in my way, so I can't really get the camera in to show you. But I'm going to gingerly use my trusty big rod. If I haven't got a rod in my hand, I've got a hammer. Whatever won't fit, belt it. So, and always check all your rubbers. Like, there's a rubber grommet through here, which is fine. It's not in bad shape, so it's fine. I've almost got this through the brake line. It's just a matter of finding a hammer and belting some stuff. There we go, through and under the brake line. It wasn't really pushing on the line. It wasn't really doing anything too exciting. Now I've just got to try to line this side up. A lot of the time the shock keeps uncompressing, so I'll compress the shock a little bit so I can line things up. Makes your life a lot easier. There we go. Because now it's trying to compress again. So I'll just push down on the top of the shock, take it all the way down, and then it gives me a minute, look at that, to pop everything through. Alright, that bolt is beautifully tucked into that shock, the collar. With that little weld I was able to strengthen up the back of the bolt. Again, just age, vibration, rust, everything else corroding it. There's nothing wrong with the bolt looks in good nick, but I needed that collar more secure, and that's feeling really good. So as you can see, it's not a big job. Like, the hardest part was getting this bolt off, which is, you know, breaker bar worthy. But once you got it broken, with a bit of the penetrating spray, that always helps. It cleans up the bolt. You see how clean it is now. It's nice, no grit and grime in it, so it'll go back together easier. But when we're putting this on, you should use a torque wrench. My torque wrench won't go up to what I need for this. This is going to be 200 and something pounds. I think mine's limited to about 180, so it'll probably break the torque wrench. So if you don't know what a torque wrench is, it's like a special wrench that tells you how much pressure you're putting on it. Now I know how much pressure was on this due to, you know, swearing and cursing and stuff to get this off. So I'm going to go and do it a bit overboard. These are high tensile screws and nuts, so they're not going to break. They're quite big, like even the nut is quite big. So I'm not scared of breaking anything. Now there's no washers, so no washers or anything with this. This is just bolted straight on which kind of feels unusual. Like you'd think you'd have a lock nut washer or something, but they don't. So obviously it works because they just use extreme force to put the nut on. Now I'm going to do this as best I can, hand tight. The penetrating spray's cleaned up everything for me, and when you undo it, it's cleaning the threads out, because this takes forever just because it's such a tight little spot and everything's in the way. Trying to use spanners, everything's bashing into everything else. So the best you can, do everything with your hands as much as you can before you have to put a spanner on. What I should have said was, the whole time, you're looking at a 19mm. That's a 19mm nut. So I probably should have said that originally. But yeah, so 19mm what you're after, socket or whatever. Now I'm not using a socket and a breaker bar because I just don't trust them. I've used a socket on a breaker bar before, and the actual internal mechanism that allows you to tighten or loosen, it broke. Like it collapsed under the weight of pushing down on, you know, a big nut that was really stuck with a breaker bar about 4 foot long on the end of it. So today I'm just using a simple spanner because I've got more strength, and these things will start bending if I'm overdoing it. Now this one's a little bit bent, but I'm not worried about that. It's not of my concern. But if you love your tools, I don't know, take it to a mechanic and get them to bend theirs. But it's not, you know, this isn't a hard job. I don't know what a mechanic costs, you know. They seem to charge about $150 an hour with an apprentice doing the work. So it's not that I don't trust every single one of them, but I don't trust many of them. You know, I'm sure there's many honest mechanics out there in the world, but I'm in a town where I don't know everyone that well yet. We're quite well networked, but mechanics just isn't a thing that's on our books. So for whatever reason, that's fine. But you know, I don't mind getting a bit dirty and doing the job. I've worked on so many cars since I was about, I don't know, 12. I was driving when I was about 12, so I loved cars when I was young. All right, we're getting up to that point of the breaker bar now, where there's nothing else that's going to move this. But yeah, it's not hard to do. You can see, you put in a shock or whatever. Like I probably saved myself, I don't know, getting a bug instead of shocks help. These are, you know, $150 off or more, so that was a good deal. But it's more the, you know, the labour. But I don't do it just as total tight ass. I don't mind doing it just because I can. If you can do something, why pay someone else to? You know, and without being rude to other people, mechanics or whoever, I just don't trust the workmanship. I've had a few cars wrecked by people tinkering with them. Like, I put one in just to get an RWC, like a roadworthy, and they ended up breaking sensors on the wheel for the anti-skid braking, the ABS, and they just wouldn't cop it. You know, I was trying to tell them they should just order the part and fix it for me. They broke it, and no, they weren't interested in any of that. Obviously it wasn't me. It was fine before I took it there, and all they had to do was inspect the car, so I don't even know how they broke something. Alright, breaker bar's getting a foot on it now, because this is what's going to be needed. So just before I push down on this breaker bar real heavy, I'm going to jump in the back and do up the top. So see if I can move this camera a little bit. Yeah, so I'm going to jump in the back of the car and do up the only nut that sits on the top inside the car, because see the play, it's got a little bit of play, and I could bend the actual shaft that runs through it. So just before I put all my weight on the big breaker bar here, I'm just going to take 1 sec to do up the bolt. I'm not even going to bother showing you doing up the bolt in the back. It's just too boring, and it's one bolt. It's pretty self-explanatory. So I'll just do that and come back. So see that I'm standing on that breaker bar, and all is going well. That is all my weight on that. You can see it while shifting around. No, that's good. That's not coming off. So that's that part. Now we're just going to put the tyre back on. Our job's pretty much done, so I'd estimate that was like 40 minutes. Probably 10 minutes of looking for tools. Always looking for tools, that kind of thing. But otherwise, you know, that's the shock going up into the body there, all the way down. See the brake lines and everything in the way. They're quite substantial, these Elgrands. So this is four-wheel drive as well, so you can see the size of all the bars and all the bits and pieces going everywhere. They're quite big. It's built like a four-wheel drive. It's just not as high off the ground. So it's pretty substantial, pretty hard to break, but you can break things when you try. Alright, I'm going to put the tyre on, and I think that's pretty much done. I'm going to say to, when you're putting tyres on cars, do everything up hand tight. Get, never, you know, put them on with an impact driver or something straight up. You can see that one I was putting on, the thread was a little bit dicky. I've got to pull the muscle in my leg, it's a bit annoying. Start everything with your hand, not tools, especially not air tools or electric impact drills and stuff. If you get this thread on wrong, it's going to destroy your day, because you would have wrecked, and you'll need to go and get the thread tapped out and new ones put in, that kind of thing. So when you're putting a tyre on a car, safest way is hand get them on, which we did, so that's easy. And then after that, with the tyre off the ground, so that's still off the ground, because they have a convex and concave fitting, do them up really gingerly, like just doing them up with the wheel off the ground. So that's going to centre the tyre properly, because each nut is now lining up. So the nut has like a convex, and inside the tyre, or on the actual mag, or whatever you want to call them, it's like the opposite. So it's like they fit together, and when they fit together, it lines everything up. So it's important not to do them up really tight when the wheel's off the ground, because everything, you want the weight of the car on them when you're doing them right up. So I've done these, you know, gingerly tight. I just go around, and you kind of do the opposite when you're doing them up. Start with this one, work to this one, go to that one, go to that one, go to that one, go to that one. So you're crossing like a star pattern, and that does up evenly, because you really don't want a tyre falling off when you're driving down the street. You know, you look like a fool, you'll probably be up for a massive insurance claim when all the chaos settles of wherever your car went and wherever the tyre ended up. So I've had a tyre come off a trailer, that wasn't my trailer, and that was pretty hairy with a full laden trailer, so I'd prefer it not to happen to a car. Popping this tyre the other day was bad enough. We went around a couple of corners, we were going 100 k's an hour, went around a few corners, and it felt like we were getting soggy. And sure enough, I pulled over and the tyre was half flat, and the tyre, I think I'll see if I can get a shot of it. It's pretty bad. And you can kind of see that isn't a good nick tyre. You can see how it's gone right down to the radial. It's the camber. You can see the camber on this car is pretty out of whack. So you see the inside of the tyre, see how worn that is? But then you get to the other side and it's like full tread. So this car's camber sits funny, and bad shocks aren't going to help that. Like, yeah, that's beautiful. It's back to normal. Before, when I bounced like that, it'd just keep going. It'll just be going like this. Just not, the shocks weren't working. Springs in it are okay. They're top of the line springs, but you know, if you really wanted like a new car feel, you'd probably change the springs, but they're just hard to get in Australia for this car. And they're not necessary. The springs are okay. They'll be a bit softer than original, but these springs are lowered and hardened anyway. So next job is front shocks, which is a total nightmare of a job. 10 times bigger than the back. The back's easy. 2 bolts or 2 nuts. 10 minutes, 15 minutes a wheel max. Most of the time is finding your tools and taking the wheel off. The rest of it's pretty easy. And like again, you get a big breaker bar to snap bolts and sort of thing, and you'll be fine. Right, well that'll do. Matt from Wheelin the World, doing some DIY car fixing crap. This one was well overdue, as you can see by my tyres. They've been stripped, so instead of wasting more money on tyres, which I now have to replace, I have to do everything. So poor man pays twice, every time. The poor man pays twice. So if I'd done this, I don't know, before I went on holidays, which was actually the plan, I wouldn't be paying for new tyres this week. So there's a lesson in everything. Just do it before it's totally broken, and if it's not broken, don't bother fixing it. Alright guys, hope that helped anyone who has a Nissan Elgrand or any car. They're all very similar, like most Nissans would be the same, so it's not necessarily just for the Elgrand. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thanks a lot.